The envelope felt heavier than paper. Lee noticed that immediately as he held it under the oil lamp, his fingers trembled slightly, not from fear of what it contained, but from what it might take away. The countryside outside was quiet. Crickets sang. Wind brushed the fields. Everything that had become familiar was still breathing around him. The letter waited. Lee sat across from him, silent. His posture was calm, but something in his eyes had shifted. Not fear, not excitement. A careful distance, like a man standing at the edge of a bridge he knew his son would have to cross alone. Lee broke the seal slowly. The paper inside was formal, clean, heavy with authority. Stamps, official marks, words in English clearer than Chinese, but still difficult. Lee read slowly, carefully, piecing meaning together. He understood one word immediately: scholarship. His chest tightened. He read again: medical studies, United States. Full support. Lee looked up at Lee, confused. Lee nodded once. This was real. The room felt smaller suddenly. The lamp flickered, and shadows of herbs danced on the wall like memories refusing to stay still. Lee lowered his eyes back to the letter. America. The word didn't feel like a place. It felt like distance, like separation, like the unknown wrapped in promise and loss. Lee spoke quietly in Chinese. His voice was steady, but the words carried weight. He pointed toward the letter, then toward Lee's chest, then toward the door, and finally toward the horizon beyond the fields. Lee understood the meaning without understanding every word. This was not an accident. This was a path. That night, Lee did not sleep. He lay under the oil lamp, staring at the ceiling, listening to the countryside breathe. Every sound felt precious now. The creak of wood, the soft rustle of wind, the distant bark of a dog. He realized something painful. This place had become his world. The smell of herbs, the discipline of morning training, the silence shared with Lee. And now the world was asking him to leave it. Morning arrived too quickly. Lee woke Lee before sunrise, like always. They trained without words. Lee's movements were sharp but distracted. Lee noticed. He corrected Lee gently, then paused the training early. That never happened. Lee walked toward the back of the house and opened the old wooden box. The same box that held tools, herbs, and the faded notebook. He reached deeper than Lee had ever seen before and pulled out a folded cloth. Lee placed it on the table and unfolded it slowly. Inside were documents old, worn, and carefully protected from time. Lee leaned closer, his breath catching. Lee pointed to a name written in careful ink, not Lee, another name, a Nigerian name. Lee's heart skipped. Lee spoke slowly now, deliberately. He tapped the name, then tapped Lee's chest. This was you. Then Lee pointed to the letter from America, then to the name again. Lee felt the ground shift under him. The name was not just a word, it was history. Lee continued, pointing to another paper, then another. Dates, places, marks of identity. Lee spoke softly, his voice carrying respect. Lee understood only fragments, but the meaning was clear. The name Lee was a shield, a simple name that helped him survive here. But it was not his beginning. Lee then turned to Lee and placed a hand gently on his back, guiding him to turn. Lee lifted the back of Lee's shirt. Lee froze. Lee pointed to the small, faded tattoo near Lee's shoulder blade. Something Lee had seen but never understood. Something he thought was just a mark from childhood. Lee traced it gently with one finger. A symbol, a matching mark. Lee spoke one sentence with deep seriousness. Lee's chest tightened again. This tattoo was not random. It was identity. It was family. It was proof. Lee pulled his shirt back down, his hands shaking. He sat heavily on the stool. Everything inside him collided at once. Nigeria, China, America. Names, places, futures. Lee sat across from him again. For a long time, neither spoke. Finally, Lee stood and placed the letter from America beside the old documents. The contrast was sharp. Past and past and future. Lee looked at Lee, his eyes firm but gentle. This was not a command. It was permission. The following days passed like a slow farewell. The village sensed something was changing. People came not just for healing now, but to look at Lee longer than usual, to speak softly, to bow slightly, to offer small gifts, fruit, cloth, herbs. Lee healed them carefully, knowing each act might be his last here. He treated joint pain one final time. He soothed allergies. He calmed stomach pain. Every face felt heavier now. The strangers from other villages returned, but this time Lee spoke firmly and sent them away without explanation. Lee watched silently. One evening, Lee took Lee to the edge of the fields. The sun was setting, painting the sky in deep orange and purple. Lee gestured across the land, slowly, like he was showing Lee a memory. Lee bowed deeply. Not because he was told, because he felt it. The night before departure, Lee prepared tea for Lee. Strong, bitter, grounding. They drank in silence. Then Lee did something unexpected. He bowed to Lee, not as a teacher, as a father. Lee's breath caught in his throat. He bowed back, lower. The morning came quietly. A vehicle waited at the dirt road, simple but official. Lee carried nothing but a small bag and the documents Lee had prepared. Before Lee stepped away, Lee placed his hand on Lee's shoulder one last time. Lee spoke softly. Lee didn't understand every word, but he understood the most important part. Go, learn, remember who you are. Lee stepped onto the road. He did not look back immediately. Only when the vehicle began to move did he turn. Lee stood there, still and calm, growing smaller with distance. Lee pressed his hand against his chest. He felt the tattoo burn slightly, like it was reminding him it existed. The road stretched ahead toward America, toward answers, toward a life that would test everything he had learned. Lee closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again, ready. The old man reveals Lee's real Nigerian name and a secret tattoo. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe.